I want to start with the RFK Jr. blackmail story. It might be a psyop. It might just be people catching up late. We've seen this before with other stories as they hit. Like it reminded me of it's reminding me of the JFK story. It's reminding me of 9/11. It's reminding me of all these things where it seems like, okay, good. On one hand, we're having a conversation with some people that maybe weren't having it before, but still there seems to be a weird timing of it. And so I'm kind of been on the fence as I'm looking at it, but let's just remind people. And the reason this is important to our discussion today, and we're going to have Mickey Willis on later, but we're talking about our health. We're talking about MAHA. That's what RFK Jr. is supposed to be about. And he's on, I'm going to remind people, he's on his Health and Human Services Twitter account right now, putting garbage out like this, where nothing about our health, talking about anti-Semitism, calling October 7th a Holocaust, saying he's glad that Trump has cracked down and got Colombia to cooperate. I'm glad Colombia has agreed to this first step. It will begin a blah, 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 blah. That's not what's going on. He knows it's not what's going on. Colombia has been strong-armed and bullied and threatened and withheld money, and they had to cave. He knows that. That's how shit works. That's what he talks about in pharma. He knows that's how pharma works. Don't you think it works the same way? When you're talking about protecting Israel, it's like protecting pharma. It's the same thing. He should know better, and we know he knows better. And just a shout out to Due Distance. This was I just love this one from last week. Maybe Doge should look into why the HHS department is spending time and resources writing statements about anti-Semitism on college campuses. Seems pretty inefficient. Good job. Zinger there, guys. Great zinger there. But let's look at another, and this is another development. This just happened today. And yesterday, we saw this. And we're going to get into this guy because you know this guy. We talk about him all the time, Rabbi Shmuley. But he's putting this out, and I guess this is official. Look at this. Congrats to Stephanie Spear on being sworn in as RFK Jr.'s right hand at HHS. Stephanie's an amazing leader, a great friend. Congrats to Stephanie Spear. This is the campaign manager of RFK Jr.'s campaign. We've had back and forth with her here. This is when we started the show. We were trying to get in there. Just like you, Jay, we were optimistic. We were hopeful. She was the point of contact. She dropped the ball on so many things, but she was this one now. Now she's competent enough to be at the HHS, a total Zionist, I would say at this point, a total fraud. Stephanie Spear did not act in an honest way when running the campaign, let alone like doing the PR, doing the booking of journalists, all this stuff. It's not, she interrupts people like Derek Bros, who wants to ask him about, do you still feel about the Palestinian people? And she just comes right in. No, we're done. No questions. Yeah, but you're just following up on, you said that the Palestine people, the most pampered people in the world, Derek Bros, friend of the show, he was just on with us. He's going up there. This is the person who would intercept a conversation like that on behalf of RFK and behalf of Israel. So it makes sense that she's in now. But this goes to the point that I think we're back to this. Let's get into this story, this blackmailing story. Before you chime in, Jay, I went through all of these clips of all these people responding. I can't, it's so overwhelming to me because everyone has a take on it. But let's just start with this one. And I'm going to get your take on this. This is Ian Carroll trying to introduce the blackmail story as if it's brand new. He's very excited. He does a 9-minute video talking about how excited he is, doesn't say anything. We're just going to play the first minute of this, but there's 9 minutes of him talking and not saying anything, except he's excited to talk about it and get viewers and hits and all that stuff and engagement. But let's look. So this is the breaking news, which happened over the weekend. Everything's going to be changed, Jay. Everything's changed after this last weekend. Check it out. Ian's going to tell you this.
Bobby Kennedy blackmail story is currently breaking in many directions all across the internet. And American politics is not going to be the same after this weekend. That's not hyperbole. This is not just a hook. And I don't really know where to start. But this is the kind of story that I've gotten enough calls from enough people tonight and there's enough going on that I feel like we need to make a video right now to keep some people safe and to get as much as we all know out on the internet right now so that everyone can be safe. And the best place for everyone to start is at Candace's video that she put up today, that she very aptly titled, "One Nation Under Blackmail." Go watch it. She does a way better job of explaining a bunch of what's going on than I could. But as soon as I was 10 minutes into it, and then I started getting phone calls from sources telling me more information, that is corroborating and taking it even further than what is exposed in that video.
So he goes on for 8 more minutes after that, saying really nothing, just how excited he is that he has all this information, but he doesn't really have information. So people come back, they challenge him and say, Ian, you haven't really said anything. So he comes back and writes this tweet and goes, yeah, my only goals are to decouple RFK Jr. from his blackmailers. Okay, that's your goal. That's what you're saying. But and you want to save the movement. We understand that, the health and freedom of movement, save America from the blackmailers. Okay. But first being their means, the second two, the ends. Okay. But this is the key. He's saying, I don't have the tapes. I haven't seen them. There's only one way to save a man from blackmail, and it isn't pretty. So again, he's still not saying anything, and we're not actually getting any further in this discussion. And it does remind me, like I said earlier, Jay, of the other, the JFK files, the Epstein files, 9/11 files. Now it's like RFK files. We're not really moving forward. And people like Ian is making us think that we are. Jay, let me hear your take on everything, because there's so much here, but I always appreciate your thoughtful critique on this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much leaning in the same direction you are. That was always my main problem with RFK Jr. Even while I was supporting him, I never really took his take on the Palestine issue seriously. In my opinion, I think it may have something to do with the death of both his father and his uncle, which are tied to Zionism in different ways. So I don't even really think he necessarily needs to be blackmailed. Like, if he had that death, happen right in front of him, because people forget RFK Jr. was actually present that day when his father got shot and assassinated. And for him to be there as it happened and then look into it and realize that the public just believed an entirely crazy story, because like if you look at the assassination of his father, no bullets entered the front of him. All the bullets came from the back. Yet the guy who they pinned the shooting on, a Palestinian, was never actually behind him. And the security guard was never even brought in for questioning, who was the only one that was close enough to shoot him at point blank range, which is what the autopsy showed. So if you're RFK Jr. and you think that Israel may have had a hand in the assassination of your father and got away with it in front of the whole world, as well as your uncle, and maybe you get the vibe that you and your family, are going to be threatened if you go against Israel, you may not even need to necessarily blackmail him anymore. Now, that being said, the truth is, no man is perfect, and RFK does have a past of, engaging multiple women. And there was, a dust up that happened during the campaign. And apparently there may have been, some texting going on with that Olivia Nuzzi woman. I haven't, seen evidence of what true or what isn't true, but can I rule it out? No, like I can't rule it out. So my thing is, though, I would like to know, why is Rabbi Shmuley so invested in what RFK is doing? Because there's a lot of people that have been appointed to different positions in the Trump administration, but he is putting a very strong emphasis on everything surrounding RFK. And the point when RFK actually came out with Rabbi Shmuley in the first place happened to be when he was accused of anti-Semitism, because he pointed out that COVID-19 did have different effects on different people. Apparently, it affected people with Chinese DNA as well as some Ashkenazi DNA slightly less than people, of other races. And all he did was he was sitting down at a table and he was pointing that out and then saying, in the future, we could see targeted bioweapons, that are targeted for specific people. He never actually said that COVID-19 was a bioweapon against everybody but those two groups. But then everyone took it, twisted it out of proportion, and then called him an anti-Semite, and he came out with Rabbi Shmuley. And ever since then, Rabbi Shmuley has been hanging around him and, tagging along. So, is it possible that he's being blackmailed? Maybe. I can't rule it out. However, have we learned anything new at all? Not that I can see. So, what I did learn, is that on top of what you just shared about Stephanie Spear, blocking you, we have had more people now come out and say Stephanie Spear is trying to censor them. Another person who was pretty involved with, supporting RFK online, Anna R. Matson on Twitter. Everyone should go check her out, follow her page. Very insightful person. Don't agree with her on everything, but, I think her heart's in the right place. I agree with her on a lot. And, she points out that she was following some of the money trails, behind RFK and, like pointing that out and saying there were some Zionists that were, donating to him a little bit too. And Stephanie Spear was the person who reached out to her directly and said, hey, cut it out. So, when I put all the pieces together and I watched the interview, I don't know if you have the Dave Smith interview clip when Dave Smith asks him, like, directly, do you think Israel has too much influence on our politicians? And he just blanks out like for 20 seconds. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah,
clip,
we've played that before. I'm going to find it right now. That's important. That's a good one.
Yeah. And when you look at that clip, what that clip tells me is that he knows. Like he knows. He clearly knows. He's just not going to say it. And again, like if you look back at the history of both his father and his uncle, the truth is RFK Sr. and JFK Sr. never once said anything negative about Israel publicly. They never once did it. However, when they were in power, they were using their power to try to rein in, Israeli influence. So, is it possible that he knows what's going on, and he's saying the things that he knows Zionists, like wants to hear? Yes. Is he actually wielding his power, like to back up their agenda? Possibly right now. Is he also doing some good at the same time in America? Yes, he is. Now, how much can RFK impact the Palestinian issue as the Secretary of Health and Human Services? I don't know how much impact he can have on that, but I do know that he's opening a commission on investigating vaccine safety. I do know he's starting Operation Stork Speed to get poison out of baby food. I do know that he is now making it, reversing the loophole that allows companies to put poison in our foods until we can prove it's not safe. So he has been doing some good things, like while he's been in there. So me personally, I wonder if this is all to distract from the good he's doing and also prevent him from doing anything else politically after this. Because if I was to point at someone who I still think has potential, I know this is going to be unpopular with you and maybe a lot of your viewers too, but I personally think that RFK still has potential. I'm not giving up on the man yet, but this story, I haven't seen anything new yet. But
okay,
yeah,
well, let's watch.
Clip. Yeah,
let's watch this clip, and then I will counter your optimistic take there after we see this. This one's a little blurry, but you guys will get the gist of it. Here we go.
Do you have concerns about the level of Israeli influence in our politics here in the United States of America?
I don't know. I mean,
that's
I
real
don't know.
time.
I'm not, I'm not a politician in political office, so I don't see much of that.
Do you have concerns about?
Yeah. Okay.
Look, real
Jay,
time.
Jay, look, this is so the blueprint I look at. So the analogy I look at when you're saying an optimistic take, like he still has something to offer, future candidate, or he can make up for this, or he can come back, he can get better, he can find a way to get whatever this thing he has, whatever this Rabbi Shmuley grasp that's on him, he can figure out a way through this. Well, I just don't know if he's trying too hard to. And the reason I can tell is because he gets very similar pushback from the pharma community when he says things like, and we just saw this one happen. He's saying that there's a certain type of person that is more affected by COVID, happens to be overweight and happens to suffer from multiple comorbidities, okay, and are older. But the one that they wanted to get him on is the overweight. How dare you? And you guys can go go Google this right now. Every single news outlet right now, currently, this isn't from a year. This is right now. We're having a real conversation about RFK. They're still having the fake one on MS, on the mainstream media, the fake conversation. They're not mentioning Israel. Like, we're talking about the real thing. They're putting out crap. Like, why is it so? It's so insensitive to talk about people's weight when we're talking about health. Leave their weight alone. He's what a horrible person. And to me, that reminds me of the language of how dare he points out different groups of people of being affected by something differently. He must be anti-Semitic. And so him trying to have to push back on the anti-Semitism claim and be bowing down to Israel ever since tells me something, because he's not doing that with pharma. He's not pushing back. He's not pulling it back. He's not taking and going, hey, I'm sorry for offending anyone that's suffering from overweight issues. We know it's a massive issue. We have to crack down on people, on fat shaming. We're going to do a fat shaming campaign. You don't see him doing that, do you? Because he has more conviction in that department, saying, I don't care if you're going to twist my words and pretend that I'm the problem. I'm bullying people. No, I'm pointing out health problems, and this should inspire people to lose some freaking weight. Mm-hmm. That's the comparison. So for me, Jay, I don't see him making up for this or finding a way around it, or he's doing the old 5D chess thing that all the Trumpers think Trump's doing right now. It's like, where's the fight? Where's the sign of it? Do you see any sign, Jay, that he's?
So let me ask you a question. Do you think JFK was a good president?
Yes.
Okay. So I promise you, man, if you go back and you look at all the clips about JFK and anything he ever said publicly about Israel, there was never a negative word. Now, my next question for you: do you think the Israeli lobby is more powerful today than it was when JFK was alive, or less powerful?
Okay, I know where you're going with this. Okay, there's another way. Okay, of course it's more powerful.
Just humor me.
Of course it's more powerful now.
All right.
Yes.
So then just listen to my line of thought.
Okay.
If he says that his personal hero, who he models himself after and looks up to, is RFK Sr., and we know from books written about RFK by his friends and the people around him that he planned to reopen the JFK investigation, but he wasn't going to talk about that publicly because he had his own doubts about it. If we get all this extra corroborating evidence that they only used power, they didn't speak about the most dangerous issue until they had power to affect it. If that's the history of the person he says he looks up to as his political hero, do I think there's hope? I'm not going to rule it out. Now, does that mean that, like, I will trust him and that I will go all out for him the way I did, the first time? You see the shirt I have on right now?
Yeah.
Bill Stein 2024. So as of right now, even though I don't agree with everything the Green Party says and does, I think the fact that she's consistent, the fact that they are a loud voice on the most vocal issue, I am putting a little bit more energy, towards that. However, the truth is, if you look at the popularity levels of the Green Party, there is a huge gap to make up for there. Now, if we're in a situation in 2028, if RFK somehow gets the nomination for either Democrat or Republican Party, or he's on the ballot in 2028 and he's polling above 20%, I may spend my entire time fighting for the Green Party, trying to get the Green Party up there. But when it comes down to it, am I going to, definitely vote for someone who isn't going to win if there's a chance that RFK can win? Or who knows, maybe he actually fixes his stance about it. I doubt it, because it kind of seems like he's just not going to criticize Israel. But if you look at the way he talks about literally every other issue, personally, I have a hard time believing that he could be this stupid like on this one issue and this corrupt on this one issue. And again, if I look at what he spent his life doing versus someone like Donald Trump, it doesn't come off to me like he is the type of person who is trying to figure out, how do I become the richest possible person in the world, and what's the quickest way for me to get rich and screw whatever happens to everyone else, because he spent his life, fighting for the environment, fighting for people's health, doing pro bono work a lot of places, and like doing a lot of good things. So his character strikes me as someone whose heart is in the right place. I can't believe he's that stupid that he doesn't really know what's going on with the Palestine issue.
He's not, Jay. He's not.
He's not. So I could be wrong. So that being said, I really do love a lot of things about the Green Party, but the truth is, on some of the social issues, they're as bad as the Democrats, and they do have a little bit of an exclusionary streak too, just like how the Democrats have. And when you speak to people, they're just not that popular. That's just the truth. So, like, I want to raise, like, I speak about them now. Like, I tell people I voted for Jill Stein. If people ask me, do I support Donald Trump? No. Do I support Joe Biden? No. I do support Jill Stein. Here's why. So I'm doing my part to try to raise awareness about it. But, at the end of the day, if we were in a situation where it was RFK as a Democratic nominee, JD Vance as a Republican nominee, and Jill Stein, and she's still polling under 1%, in that case, maybe I will vote for RFK. But if there's a chance that we can get a third party above 5%, I'm voting third party. I will say that. But, I do think that the Green Party does need to figure out how to rebrand themselves a little bit and be a little bit more inclusive. So I think there's hope. Look at his history, read between the lines, and look at what his father and uncle actually said and did, and then ask yourself, how could that apply if you took that same mindset to where RFK Jr. is?
Fair enough. Okay. Well, I appreciate your optimism on this. We'll keep our eye on the story. And I'll just say for the record, obviously RFK Jr. would be a much better president than Donald Trump. So that's, I think that's a given. So we're not talking about like the other things he brings to the table that are just so much on a higher level of a moral compass, but it's just this one thing. It's big. It's huge.
And his rhetoric on it is insane. Huge. It's insane how bad he is on this issue.
Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on this, and I'll try to keep your optimism. I'm inspired. But let's keep calling out BS.
But here's the thing: I'm always open to new information. You know that about me, Matt. If you show me new information that changes the picture, I'm always open to it. So let's see what happens.